What is going on, everyone? This is Ryan with the Roundtable of Wraith, and we are bringing back the fan favorite in-depth first impression vids. We are going to start off with everybody's favorite resident ranger here, Lexi Livewire. But before we get into the video, let's introduce the roundtable participants today. I'm going to start off with Mr. Azalea himself, Levi. Welcome to the first impressions video here. I'm sure you're stoked to get into a ranger deep dive here.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I guess the Padawan to Mr. Azalea, Mr. James Welsh, as normal. He's
I
he's always on these things.
I'm gonna refer to myself more so as the Qui-Gon of the situation because I one will not admit to being a Padawan.
Of
That's
course.
below me, and
Sure.
two, I will stray away from the Jedi norms, and so I am the Qui-Gon of the Ranger, not the Padawan.
That's fair. Sorry, by the way, of the screaming child in the background. We'll tranquilize her soon, so she'll be quiet. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Sam, who not a Ranger player, not a Lexi player. He has just been on the receiving end of a lot of Lexi shenanigans, so I'm sure he's excited to talk about all these cards. Sam, welcome here.
Number one Ranger hater at this
Yeah,
point. I've had enough arrows shot at my ass that it's not fun anymore.
that's perfect. Yeah, so how we're going to do this is similar to our other deep dive videos or first impression videos. If you guys are familiar with our other ones that we did for Monarch, we're just going to kind of go into the cards, set by set, or I guess like section by section. So we're going to start off with Lexi, and then we'll talk about the Elemental Ranger specific cards. We'll talk about, some of the lightning cards we like, some of the ice cards that we like, and then we'll get into her equipment. It's been nice because I've been testing kind of lightning Lexi. Jim has been focusing on ice Lexi. Levi has been focusing on degenerate Lexi. And then
hmm
Sam has just been getting his ass kicked by degenerate Lexi. So it's going to be a nice little mix of, opinions and card values. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this and hear what everyone has to say. But first and foremost, we are going to start out with the lady of the hour, Miss Lexi Livewire. She is a brand new hero from the Tales of Aria. She has the essence of ice and lightning, which means you can just incorporate ice cards and lightning cards in your deck. She is the standard for intellect, 40 health, and she has the ability, once per turn action, turn a face down card in your arsenal face up. If it is a lightning card, your next attack this turn gains go again. If it's an ice card, create a frostbite token under the target hero's control, go again. And to note, if you flip over a card that happens to have both ice and lightning, you do indeed get both of the effects. She does have one of those, which is actually a bonkers card, but we'll get into that later. So first impressions, we'll start with Levi, Mr. Azalea, the Ranger top eighter. What do you think about Lexi?
I think she's got a really good hero power. Just yeah, the versatility is really strong, and both effects are just really impactful. Kind of sucks that it doesn't work with cross wrap, the Ranger headpiece we'd seen previously. Obviously, you can't, or it's much harder to flip up two cards from your arsenal in the same turn. So cross wrap is basically unplayable in Lexi. But just the ability to give go again is something that Rangers always struggled with. So uh, the lightning side is really good, and then the frostbite side just shuts down defense reactions, which is another thing Rangers struggled with. So I think both sides of Lexi's ability are really strong tools for the Ranger class.
Jim, what are you liking about Lexi so far?
I agree with everything Levi said. In my opinion, it's the second best hero ability next to Chain. Uh, like he said, the versatility of the two options, making an innate frostbite every turn feels extremely strong, and then giving another attack go again. We haven't gotten into her bows yet, but when you're flowing with go again, and or you're doing something to stun or ruin your opponent's game plan, it's just a really strong ability overall, and in my opinion, one of the stronger abilities in the game. I think she's got an excellent hero power.
Sam, more or less agree, disagree? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. I was thinking about that earlier today when I was trying to think about things to say about her. I honestly think her hero power is better than Chain. I mean, it gives her go again to anything that's relevant. I mean, the whole deck can just start off with that, with flipping Electrify. You get another card in hand, you inherently get go again. The Frostbites will just cause annoying disruption. In Levi's deck, it doesn't focus around that nearly as much as the lightning aspect, but I've been on the other side of that as well. So just the utility that it unlocks within your deck is just pretty insane, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed playing Oldham is like the frostbites. He doesn't have as easy of a time creating them as Lexi, and the fact that if you are going ice centric, just creating the frostbites every turn is just so disruptive. And I mean, you really don't have to do anything because a lot of the cards that she plays, I know we'll dive into them, but a lot of those ice cards, especially, you want them in Arsenal because you gain added benefits from them. So. We're going to dive in here. We're going to start off with some Elemental Ranger cards. We are going to start off with Frazzle. Frazzle is a lightning variant. It's an Elemental Ranger card, but it's kind of towards the lightning end of the spectrum. It is a 1-cost 5 for the red, 3 block. I love those. Lightning Fusion. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with Fusion, just after you play this card, you just have to reveal another lightning card from your hand, and that technically fuses this card. It says, if Frazzle was fused, whenever an attack would deal damage this turn, instead, it deals that much damage plus 1. So a lot of this set, the kind of the theme of this set, besides being all fusy and stuff like that, is cards no longer having on-hit triggers, but a lot of these cards say when they deal damage. So Frazzle also doesn't have to hit in order for that effect to go into play. So if Frazzle was fused, whenever an attack would deal damage this turn, instead it deals that much damage plus 1. Sam, I'm going to kick this to you. Why is this card insane? I think this card's amazing. I want to hear your opinion as to why this card is insane.
I think that it was made with the intention to be played in a Voltaire build. Just because you're threatening multiple instances of damage going wide, the best way to optimize it would be obviously to be threatening 2 to 3 arrows or any kind of attack throughout the turn. And I think not only was this card built well for CC, but it was clearly for limited play. I mean, it's an extremely powerful common. It was intended to be more threatening, I think, in that instance, because it doesn't have dominate unless you give it dominate. But it's just, you can block it out pretty well. It's just the additional threats that it can present, let alone it being a 1-cost. So it can be also added on with Shock Charmers, which is not cool, I guess. But I haven't
Yeah.
really seen Shock Charmers perform in that instance, but in theory it could work. So
Yeah, I was playing this yesterday, and I was running 9 of these, and this thing gets out of hand because then Shock Charmers, you can deal it. It would deal an extra damage because now that card's hitting, so you're dealing 1 extra. It just completely snowballs. And so much like a couple of the ice cards that we'll talk about that I've seen Jim utilize extremely well. This is one of those starter like lightning cards where you lead with Frazzle, and it's like you're giving it go again, usually from Voltaire or something, and it just is an absolute snowball after that because it's like, well, if I just take this, now I'm taking 6 plus the go again. I don't know what cards they have left. And then if I leave myself open to Shock Charmer, they can continue to just pump, pump, pump. And I'm taking just absurd amounts of damage just from this card alone. So I think this card's great. Levi, do you have any, adverse opinions there?
No, I agree. Obviously it depends on your build. But with Shock Charmers, it's super strong. It has its kind of counterpart. I know we'll get into it, but it and Buzzbolt, depending on the situation, it's weird. They work together really well, but you don't. One of each works better than 2 Frazzles or something.
Yeah.
And then like Buzzbolt, we'll get into it more later. But I think Frazzle's probably the slightly stronger one just due to Shock Charmers. But yeah, it's just a super solid card.
We'll talk about Shock Charmers a little bit later, but I
Yeah.
feel like we're going to be referencing it a lot because a lot of what Lexi wants to do is deal damage, and Shock Charmers just opens the door for some snowballs. Jim, what do you think? I know we're going to get to Chilling Ice Vein, which is kind of the counterpart to this one, and I'll start with you on that one. But what do you think about Frazzle?
Nothing that the other guys didn't say. I will say I think every single arrow in here that you're going to see performs better with Voltaire, because and originally when I was thinking of making an ice version, I was like, oh, I'll try Shiver because Dominate's cool. But just to reiterate what Sam and Levi and you said, just fusing gets you the claws, and so as long as you're shooting another arrow or dealing damage another way this turn from another card, you want that to snowball, and you want that trigger to be live for as many cards as possible, frustrating and making it decisions harder on your opponent. So majority of these arrows fit better when played wide rather than just a single shot. But yeah, I think it's excellent. Again, they have made some common cards, just like in Monarch, almost stand out more than some of their rares. And I think that's a good thing. And this is definitely, like, if this was a rare, I would be like, yeah, it makes sense. It's really good. But it's a great card overall. Nothing I can provide to the conversation that you guys did not already.
I do like that they gave their Brody Lee tribute to this card. And Jim's probably the only guy that got that reference.
He does look like him.
Yeah. All right. Next card we're going to talk about is another common here, Flake Out. This is going to be an ice fusion, so the other end of the spectrum here. It says if Flake Out was fused, it gains Dominate. It is the same stats as Frazzle, 1 for 5 with a 3 block, the red version. Jim, what do you think about Flake Out here?
So Flake Out is my least favorite of the. I like to call them Ice and Lightning arrows, even though that's not their titled cards, right? Flake Out is my least favorite of the Ice Fusion arrows. Gaining Dominate late game is outstanding. However, a lot of the Ice cards that synergize with that go into a Lexi deck, which we'll get a chance to talk about later, have caveats to gain Dominate in more frequent ways. We'll talk about Polar Blast. We'll talk about Weave Ice. But I find myself gaining Dominate without having to play this card to fuse it to gain Dominate. So is this a great ability to have, and am I glad it exists in her toolbox? Absolutely. Probably a great arrow to close out a game with. But as far as presenting the opponent with a decision on a turn through early and middle game, this arrow is not as threatening as the rest of her arrows. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that or not.
This just kind of seems like arrow number 2 in the chain. Like, if you don't play Ice Vein or like Blizzard Bolt or something else that's a little bit better, and this doesn't seem as good. I mean, I haven't played this version, so I couldn't speak to it. So Levi or Sam or you, whoever wants to jump in here, but go ahead, Levi.
No, I agree entirely with Jim. Like, it's cool that it exists, but we have enough other access to Dominate that it feels underwhelming. And another thing about the Ranger class is traditionally the idea for having Dominate was to be able to push through on hits, but the extra clause on this card effect is the Dominate. So you don't actually have many on hits unless you're playing the other cards that are giving it like on hit create a Frostbite. But I think it's possible that it could see some usage maybe in Blitz, just because the lower health makes Dominate a little more valuable. But seeing this in the first half of a CC game just feels kind of bad. So I don't think it makes the cut there.
And Ryan, let me. You did say you like it as like the second arrow shot, and I would agree with that. And then I would counterpoint and say, when you start to flow and play with Lexi, you'll realize that fusing the first arrow will come easily. Fusing both arrows can be sometimes a pain. And so since you need to fuse to gain Dominate, if you had shot, let's say, a different arrow first, threatened a non-hit, and then played this card afterwards, and then you wanted to dominate with it to also guarantee that on hit, it does have to be fused, and sometimes you have already revealed that card to fuse, and then you might end up pitching or doing something. It would require having it's harder to fuse the second arrow is what I'm trying to say. And so that kind of limits its ability as the second arrow shot, but I do like the idea of using this to guarantee an on hit from a previous fused arrow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like, 1 for 5 as a second arrow is fine, but like, yeah, I don't see any world where you take this arrow over a zero coster that you might want. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine, but I don't think this is great. Like, and like Levi said, uh, the dominate is fine, but this doesn't have any on hit. And I've found, even with my limited testing with Lexi, I almost want them to spend their hand blocking me out on the second arrow to prevent an on hit. So like, dominate's almost counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do. Like, if I'm dominating this arrow and I'm forcing them to only block with 1 with no on hit, they might just block with 0 and keep their hand. Whereas, if I don't have the dominate, they might be forced to block it out because they don't want an additional on hit from a previous arrow. So I don't know.
I think you were close, but I think we're missing the mark. No pun intended, I guess, with that. I think this card is
Hey.
very clearly made for sealed and limited play.
Yeah.
I think Levi was close with him talking about with Blitz, you have a lower life total, but I think this card just really shines in limited play because it seems so far that in sealed, it's focusing a lot more on unblockable damage. So to kind of make it even with the arcane that Briar's putting out, both Oldhim and Lexi have dominate options, so they can still force through damage in limited play. So I think this arrow was much more tuned for limited than it was in CC.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a great point. They love their limited. All right, next arrow on the list. Moving on up, back to the lightning side of the abilities here. We have the Dazzling Crescendo. Lightning Fusion, 0 cost for 4, block for 3, which most of Azalea's arrows I felt like block for 2. So it's a nice little a step up for Lexi that a lot of her arrows block for 3.
Every arrow has always blocked for 3.
Everything ever.
Yes.
It's her non-attacks.
That's how little I played Azalea. I opened up my binder to look at Azalea cards, and like a dust cloud fucking came out. Like, had no idea. It's like, oh shit, that card. It says if Dazzling Crescendo was fused, it gains Go Again. So a 0 for 4, 3 cost. If it's fused, it gains Go Again. Levi, why is this card great?
I think it's really interesting because we've been talking about the Voltaire list more so than the Shiver lists, which I think Voltaire is better. But one thing you're going to run into is if you want to play Voltaire, you need to pitch 1 resource to load an arrow, 1 resource to load another arrow, and then if you have a bunch of 1-cost arrows, all of a sudden you're spending 4 for the turn. With a 0-cost arrow, you can get away with only spending 3. And I think Dazzling Crescendo fits that bill really well. Additionally, since it can have inherent Go Again, we can use Voltaire to give the +1, and all of a sudden it's a 0 for 5 with Go Again. And 0 for 5 is pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I think it fits well in those lists if we're looking for just pressure and not the on hits. I think it's really good in the Death Dealer list, but that's another beast. But overall, I think it's a solid arrow, and something that, like I mentioned, Go Again can be bit tough to come by, so I think that's super useful. Sorry, one more point on that is it's an arrow that you can arsenal and not have it hurt your turn.
Yep.
Traditionally, if you arsenal an arrow, you get stuck with playing it, and because it's not an electric card, Lexi isn't going to be able to give it Go Again. Since we're not loading it with Voltaire, we can't give it Go Again. So arsenaling an arrow traditionally had been kind of a bad move. This is an arrow that you can arsenal pretty comfortably. So overall, I like it.
Sam, what do you think? 0 for 5 seems good.
Yeah, it's basically a machine gun card. I mean, I've been shot by so many of these in one turn with Levi's Death Dealer build. I think it's a fair card. I don't think it's busted. It's just really annoying that it costs 0 and it's at a 4 break point. If it was 3, it would maybe be a fair card, but I don't think anyone would play it. People would play it, but not to the degree that it has function now. And I've noticed that with this set, they've kind of buffed breakpoints. So before it was 4, But now it's kind of moving into 5,
It is
6
5
range.
now. It is 5.
Which is very annoying as well. And so the fact that it is at that 4 then can be very easily pushed into 5, just makes it very, very strong.
Do you have any opinions on Dazzling Crescendo?
No, I just want to reiterate the great point that Levi said about the 0 cost being its greatest attribute. I am playing obviously a Ice Lexi in all of my testing, but I run a lot of 0 cost arrows just for the sole reason, like he said, to have if you're playing Voltaire, that is, to not have to spend 4 resources on load shoot, or whatever it may be. But no, I agree with everything you guys said. I personally haven't gotten to. I played one lightning version one time just to feel it, and it felt great. It's above average arrow, in my opinion.
Yeah, I run 3 reds in the deck that I've been testing. I don't run the yellows or the blues, but I would recommend starting there. I think this card's a fine 0 cost for 4, and it has felt very good in my testing so far. Next, Jimmy Boy, we're gonna start with you here. We are, of course, on the Chilling Ice Vein. Chilling Ice Vein is, by the name of it, you can probably tell it's an ice elemental arrow. It is a 1 for 5 with 3 block. If Chilling Ice Vein was fused, whenever an attack deals damage to a hero this turn, they discard a card unless they pay a resource. That seems vicious. James, explain to me why that card is just filthy.
So this is an arrow that I'm playing all 9 copies of. I see the value in every color, and the on hit effect. We'll say it's the on damage effect, but essentially, whenever a card deals damage this turn, them having to discard or pay means that at minimally you're going to get at least a blue out of their hand potentially, a blue or a yellow. It would be naive for someone to let this card hit and pitch a red and not assume that another on hit trigger was coming shortly after. So it's going to get one card out of their hand, most likely, if it deals damage, and then that's good. Anything that threatens or ruins their game plan for their next turn is something that I am excited about. My favorite thing about this arrow, and when we get to Blizzard Bolt, is it makes players who would normally say, I'm okay with taking off the damage here. I don't mind holding on to my hand and then dealing a lot back. It allows you to dish an ample amount of damage and ruin their turn, even if they would have in a position where they would want to keep their full grip and then clap back. This is you saying you don't have that option, or you might not have that option now. A decision has to be made. Are you going to use equipment to avoid this on damage effect, or are you going to make a decision to block? Either way, it's a win for us. So fusing this and then following up with another arrow afterwards is extremely strong. I like it. I play all 9, like I said before. There's value in every single color, and it's arrow number 2 ranked, power rank, in the ice version, in my opinion.
Sam, what do you think about this card?
I've only played it against it a few times. It's never felt like a huge threat unless it's in a scenario where I'm getting threatened with an on hit. Like the ice discard a card, pitch a card mechanic, I'm still kind of trying to figure it out, because it's weird when it's presented to you and you have a hand where it doesn't matter if you discard or pitch a card. I'm still trying to find the difference as to like when would I want to pitch a card versus discard a card, because a lot of times I'm being threatened with a pay 1 or discard, and if I have a red anyway, I'm just going to pitch that. So I'm still trying to understand how big of a threat it really is and what's the best way to play around it.
Cool. Levi, any closing thoughts here? I'll jump in.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm
Go
good.
ahead.
I was gonna say, sorry, I lost my train of thought really quick. Crap. Train of thought.
We're on
Ice
the Ice
Vein,
Vein.
Chilling
Ice
Ice Vein.
Vein.
Yeah. So on paper, I think the effect is probably the strongest arrow. The only issue I've kind of run into when looking at it is it's the pay one resource or discard. If they're only paying one resource, we run some lists are running other effects that are also pay one resource. You've got I might be. Is it Winter's Bite? Is that the name of the one?
There's Winter's
Yeah.
Bite. There's Polar
Yeah,
Blast.
and Polar Blast. So yeah, those two. And it has a little bit of anti-synergy with that, where occasionally if you go, I'm going to play a Winter's Bite blue, like I'll pitch a blue, and then you're looking at your hand, like I have a Chilling Ice Vein, and they've got 2 resources floating. This arrow doesn't do as much as I wanted before. So I think you can run into a little bit of anti-synergy within your own deck, but overall, I think it's still a really strong arrow.
It does. Let's say, for example, in a deck that wants to control and play defense reactions or even old him, if they were to, like you said, pitch a card, let's say they pitched a blue to prevent Polar Blast or whatever, a blue Polar Blast or whatever it may be, and they do have 2 floating, it still might limit their maximum upside, knowing that they'd have to commit another resource to this rather than something that they'd want to on their turn. But like you said, it is anti-synergistic at times. I still think I like the presentation of this conundrum for them. If I'm making you think more on my turn about your upcoming turn, and it's kind of throwing you for a loop, a more novice player is going to have a hard time dealing with all the RAM that's taking place on your turn. So yeah, the on-hit effect is good. But yeah, I kind of agree with Levi. Sometimes the upside is not as high as it may seem on paper.
Jim's finally come around to my my Star Wars Destiny line of thinking, where putting your opponent for like really tough decisions is actually super beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that also for me, unless the arrow's dominated, it's really not that big of a threat, because it's like, what's the difference of me throwing an extra card down to block out the damage as it would be if I took it and would have to pay to discard a card. This is in the circumstance it's not dominated and I don't already have floating resources. So it's kind of like, it's not that big of a threat because I'm just going to block it anyway.
Yeah, but then the next one, yeah, because what I'm doing then is shooting this arrow first. I'm never shooting this arrow second. I'm shooting this arrow. I'm shooting this.
Praxis again.
Yeah, I'm shooting this arrow first with the intention of following up with a second arrow, and so
probably shock charmer. Yeah.
So then dealing with this the first time, like you said, does not come off as threatening. It's when I then shoot the next arrow and I say +1 on a searing shot that's going to be 5 on hit, lose a health, and discard or pay, and then you go, oh man. And then if you let that hit, I can then pay, which we'll talk about, shock charmers, to proc it again. So it's more so presenting this to your opponent first, and then have them thinking, okay, well, what's going to follow this up to make me do this again? That's why I said when someone pitches a red to pay for this effect, in my head I go, got him, because the next arrow is going to trigger the same ability, and then they're going to have the same conundrum. So if you pitch a red on this first one, you're not going to have another resource to do it for the second one. So you got to block. You better fully block the next one, or make a decision on what you're going to do. And either way, it's a win-win for me.
Yeah, like in that circumstance you described, I would probably have just blocked.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would have just been like, all right, whatever, block with my hand, take no damage. And so, yeah, it threatens a turn where I have to just block it out. Yeah. But at the end, it's like you did a lot of fancy stuff to do nothing. And that's what it feels like a lot of times.
But I agree. Okay, so I do agree.
We have to move on.
I know. But I just want to say, again, closing argument. It's the spot of which I said before where players will want to keep their hand now do not have the decision to make that, and so it's forcing you to block, and perhaps you did not want to. You were content with
The mindset has to shift with this version of Lexi.
Yes.
That mindset of I'm just going to eat a shit ton of damage can't exist with this version of Lexi and that card existing.
Yep.
All right, moving on. We're going to go back to the lightning side. We have Buzz Bolt, another 1 for 5 with the 3 block. Lightning Fusion. If Buzz Bolt was fused, whenever an attack hits a hero this turn, it deals 1 damage to them. I'm going to start off with this one. So this is another great arrow here, kind of tag teaming with Frazzle. This is another good like kind of turn starter where every additional time you hit this turn, it deals 1 damage. The thing that keeps this in check that I've noticed with playing, yes, it's good. Yes, damage stacks up. It's fantastic with Shock Charmers, which we should just talk about that card at this point. But Lightning Lexi doesn't have a whole lot of on-hit effects, right? Lightning Lexi's bag is kind of just shitting out damage as fast as possible and getting the game over with as few rounds as she can possibly do. So yes, it's a pseudo shock charmers where every time an attack hits, you deal an additional damage, but you're not really proccing a lot of on hits unless you're pairing this with a frazzle, where then you're dealing double damage, or like a ball lightning. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. So yes, this card is very good in my opinion. I don't run all 9. I run the yellows and the reds right now. But I don't think this card is as good as Frazzle. But just because Lightning Lexi doesn't have as many on hits as Ice Lightning or Ice Lexi, so you're not really stacking Frostbites, you're not stacking discards or anything like that. But another fine card that is threatening. People are going to want to block this because it is pretty, they don't want to take a ton of damage because it does spiral pretty quickly with her. But we'll pop it over to Levi if you have any additional musings on Buzzbolt.
Yeah, no, I agree that it ends up being kind of a counterpart to Frazzle. And then so we've got those 2 different effects, and they kind of pair with the ball lightning effect and the shock charmers effect. So it's interesting because if you want to stack multiple of those effects, you want one effect that is increasing all instances and one that's making more instances. So like, I don't know how that changes your lists, but if you want to be running ball lightnings and stuff, all of a sudden Buzzbolt becomes better. If you're not running ball lightning, I don't think there's really or Buzzbolt becomes significantly worse than Frazzle. We'll go with that because Frazzle works with the shock charmers. If you're not running shock charmers, then I think Buzzbolt is better. So it kind of, you look at the rest of your list and pick which one you think is going to work better or synergize better.
Yeah, if you're running shock charmers, then both cards are just really very good.
Can I say, when a simpleton like me and my pea brain and looks at this card and says to themselves, "Wait a minute, what's the difference between Frazzle and this card?"
Why did you put an accent on that? Jesus.
Sorry. Well, what is the difference? I don't know. I just wanted to sound not as spry.
If you're from Nashville and you were offended by that, please write into the show. We'll cancel off here.
But no, what? So, correct me if I'm wrong. This is on hit, it deals 1, and when we read Frazzle is when it deals damage, deals an additional.
An additional. So Frazzle is +1. So like if you were to shock charmer with after a Frazzle, that shock charmer would deal 2 instead of 1.
Okay.
Buzzbolt does not deal an additional.
Because it has to be on hit, not on
correct
deal
on that,
damage.
Levi? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, but Buzzbolt is going to be a separate instance of damage.
Yes.
And it won't proc on the shock charmer effect. However, if you were to however, with like with a ball lightning or a Frazzle effect, when you combine it with Buzzbolt, that Buzzbolt, because it's 2 separate instances of damage, those other effects will increase both instances, whereas Frazzle only increases the single instance.
Yes.
So that's where it's interesting is one of each type effect ends up being better than 2 of the same.
Yeah, they're very versatile. They play like they don't really play off each other, but they toe the same line. And so yeah, they're very They're very powerful in the same deck. I think they're great. I just think Buzzbolt is a 6 of just because it's slight for me. I'm sorry. For me, it's a 6 of because it's slightly worse than the Frazzle effect. I'd much rather have the Frazzle effect as the 9 of.
Right, because Frazzle has the synergy with Shock Charmers, and Shock Charmers are always available.
Yes, I agree. All right, next card, Sam. We're gonna kick this one to you first. Here, we're gonna go to Blizzard Bolt. Blizzard Bolt's an Ice Fusion card. 1 for 5, 3. That seems to be the theme of the set here. If Blizzard Bolt was fused, whenever an attack deals damage to a hero this turn, create a Frostbite token under their control. What do we think, Sam?
It's annoying. I mean, they're just all annoying cards.
All
It's
these cards just suck ass.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, again, the frost mechanics so far, in theory, it's very threatening, but in reality that I've been playing at it so far, it just kind of makes me feel like, all right, guess I'll wait a turn, or like I'll just block and then I'll wait a turn, and then when those have their turn, they'll be gone, and I can kind of play around it that way. So there's been a number of times where I'm just like, whatever, I'll take the damage, I'll get my frostbites, I'll block out what damage I can, and I'll arsenal and set up for my next turn. And then most of the time, the decks aren't consistent enough to be pushing out that kind of turn every turn. So you will have an off turn typically, but that's at the current state. Obviously, maybe people will refine it and make it much better and make me completely think otherwise. But I think that frost mechanic shines most when it's paired alongside of lightning, but you have to be so lucky with your draws to get those to pair effectively and consistently. It's not as frightening as I think it in theory is.
Walsh and Sam just have to have a live duel here because every take here, I'm loving this like dynamic here where every take Jim's like taking it personally and then he's gonna counter here. I love this. Jim, rebuttal that. Why is Blizzard Bolt insane?
I'm not taking it personally. I just it make everything he's saying.
I'm poking the bear.
Everything he's saying makes sense, and I felt the same way when I was playing with Shiver and shooting and dominating and maybe maximum threatening this one time. It didn't seem like a problem, but now that I'm on the Voltaire team and I have flipped to make one already, and then I shoot this. If it hits, it makes another. I shoot my next arrow. If I fuse this, it makes another. And I am finding myself now with my deck finally being refined to where I am consistently threatening some type of annoyance every turn or majority of turns, to where it is like not giving them the option of, like Sam said, I'll pivot for a turn and wait. The poor gentleman I played last night was like, all right, I'll pivot and wait, and it just never stopped. And then I was like, wow, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm usually the one complaining about shit like this, not the one dealing it. But
you are?
Yeah, who would have thought? But I get the card in general, just like Chilling Ice Vein, comes off as not as threatening when it's presented to you by itself. It's then when there are follow-up attacks, when there's a follow-up 1 more arrow or sometimes a follow-up 2 more arrows or even another card, then that's when the problems really can start to snowball out of control.
That's the strength of Voltaire.
Yeah, and that's the strength of Voltaire. And this is arrow number 1 for me. They could have made this a majestic, and I would have been like, yeah, this is sick. This is my favorite ice arrow.
I guess I should just add then, I think where a lot of my positivity is coming from is just my hope that it isn't as bad as I think it is. And so I'm just trying to hold out some hope that it's not as broke as I realistically think it might be. So I'm just trying to remain positive so I can keep playing the game and think I have a chance.
We're gonna shatter this. Yeah, someone's got to shatter this kid's spirit here, and it's just gonna be done. Next podcast. Well, this is the last podcast that you're gonna see Sam in.
Sam's He's retiring after this. He somehow
Check out
was
some Yu-Gi-Oh casts. Yeah, you'll catch him there.
He was less annoyed with Chain than he seems to be with Lexi, and that's because maybe Levi is his main testing partner is Lexi try hard.
And then just wait until the next card here.
And then he knows when he comes to me, he's gonna have to deal with Lexi again. And so there's a lot of Lexi floating around, and Sam's just not gonna have a fun time this current set.
It's like I'm between Sodom and Gomorrah right now.
Oh, man. All right. We are moving on here. Levi has been fantasizing about this next card for, I think, since the set was spoiled here. What combo draws doing 65 damage a turn, whatever it might be. And of course, I'm talking about Snapshot. It's the first rare of the set. It is an elemental ranger. I don't know why I was going to say it's not, but 0 for 4. What a shitty arrow, right? Nah.
Yeah, terrible.
3 block, lightning fusion. If Snapshot was fused, you may activate abilities of bows you control an additional time this turn as though they were an instant. Oh, that doesn't seem that great. Levi, explain to the crowd why you're a degenerate and how this card contributes to just being absolutely degenerate.
So when they released this card, or announced it, I read it and I go, that seems like it's really good with Death Dealer. I'm playing Lexi with Death Dealer, and this card, I don't even know what the rest of the set looks like, but that interaction in and of itself, I think, is enough to carry a deck.
Let me interrupt you real quick. Why is this card good with Death Dealer
Yeah,
specifically?
so Death Dealer is gonna be traditionally it's an action. You pay a resource, you load an arrow, and you draw a card, and it has go again. Now, Snapshot lets you use it an additional time, and I think Death Dealer has always been super strong just because of the draw. Being able to draw multiple times in a turn is great. But then you have the other caveat that Death Dealer has go again, which neither Voltaire or Shiver have because they're naturally instants, which means when you play it as an instant, you gain an action point. So I think Snapshot is terrible with any other bow. I don't think it's worth running with Voltaire or Shiver. However, with Death Dealer, it essentially, when fused, it gives you a way to replace the action point as well as draw another card. So chaining a few of these together, all of a sudden you're seeing 6, 7, 8 cards in a turn, and it's just kind of, as these kind folks would say, degenerate. Yeah.
So, real talk here, like asking
Yeah.
you, like you've obviously been playing it, Sam. We'll get to the Yu-Gi-Oh player in a second here, but is this an interaction that you feel potentially they overlooked or broke the game in any stretch? Because this does feel a little bit,
Yeah, I think it might have been glossed over a little bit, but the more we've been testing, the more I'm realizing that it does have its weaknesses. It's not
Okay.
just an unstoppable force.
Okay.
The deck can't block.
Right.
Like it just can't block. So threatening with any kind of on hit is gonna leave it a bad time because it's only on hits or damage, like you were talking about. So it's an interesting deck. We'll see how it shapes up, but overall, I think Snapshot probably shouldn't have been printed.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So is it viable in a Voltaire build? Let's say someone had just they got their product, they pull a Voltaire. Is this playable because it's just another 0 cost arrow that you could spit out for 4, even though you're not going to use the ability? Or is this something that, if you're not playing the Death Dealer build, is this not in a list?
I don't think it makes the cut unless you're playing Death Dealer. There's so many other arrows that are just better than it in a Voltaire list. You've got Bolt and Shot, you've got Searing Shot, Heck Run Endless Arrow.
Dude, I was even looking at Pathing Helix because it lets you
honestly play Pathing Helix over this.
Matt Rogers runs all 9 of these in his list. You guys call him Matt Rogers, and are you guys calling Matt Rogers trash?
I did not specifically say that, but I don't think it's good in the list. I'll have to look more at his list and see what I'm missing. But that's
there's a really good video that he Fab with Matt. Check it out. I watched it.
Yeah.
Did he happen to justify the selection of this card? Because I'm sort of leaning. I'm leaning with
All he-
Levi.
All he did was he was like mapping it out and said, "Snapshot, this card's insane." And
I
then
mean, I guess with
he was
with
9 of Snapshot, 9 of Frazzle.
with
It's
with
good.
three of
You
a
get 3
kind.
go against.
It's hard to afford all that though with Voltaire. Like you run out of cards unless you have 3 of
No,
a kind.
Levi just 3 of a kind lets
Yeah,
you do
with
it.
on a three of a kind turn, I think it's fine. But
Yeah, it's great with that. Yeah.
but if you don't have three of a kind in your hand, I think it's just a bad arrow. So I don't know.
Sam, do you like losing to this card?
It should have never been made. It should be
Yeah.
banned, and I think it's toxic for the game. I think that it's just not a fun card to play against. I don't think they thought it through, but with all that said, it's beatable. It's not like completely breaking to where it just makes you not be able to play any other hero or any other cards. Um, but it's just a very, very powerful card, and it's a card like Levi said that a deck is basically built around,
Yeah.
which I don't like. That is coming from the Yu-Gi-Oh world, where you center around one card to basically just function the deck, in a solitaire fashion. Because like Levi said, I mean, I've played against this where he's threatening 7 arrows, 7 attack actions, drawing like 5 cards in a turn. Like, okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but
No, my highest was 9 attacks in a turn.
okay, sorry. So
That's
it wasn't an
fucked up.
exaggeration. I've played against this deck way more times than I want to play against it. But it's good because I'm able to test a variety of different heroes, and I'm surprisingly finding that the old heroes stand up very well to it. Katsu does really well against this deck, surprisingly more than I would have even suspected. But he does threaten a pretty potent on hit. It's you're gonna die.
It
So
always does.
yeah.
Hey, you lose the game if you take this damage.
Yeah, so and then Reinar, he actually has a pretty decent matchup because this deck's greatest weakness is on hits or blocking. And even though you can't block 9 attack actions, it's not like that kind of turn's happening every single turn.
Sure.
So even just blocking puts a lot of stop to the momentum. And it does allow you still to play relatively well if you're in like a mid-range kind of build or something like that.
For sure.
If in,
Uh,
I'm gonna move. I do want to move along. I understand we gotta move, but I know you said that it shouldn't have been printed, but more so if using Death Dealer as an instant, if when you used it as an instant did not provide go again, would then this card be fine?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so
it would be
too.
fine.
but I disagree with changing the fundamental rules of the game because, like, you know, creepers, like spellbound creepers, like the whole gimmick there is making sure that a card with go again gains that person an action point. So changing that, you would have
No, I'm
to
not saying changing the rules. I'm saying changing
rat a Death Dealer.
or just just specifically Death Dealer, saying like if
I
Death
hate
Dealers,
erratas.
I understand, but I'm saying
Yeah.
that's an easier fix than just saying this card doesn't exist. But digressing from the Death Dealer Snapshot stuff, because I'm sure we're gonna come out with a video about that in our near future.
Yeah.
If it cost 1, it would have been fine.
Yeah,
Would've been bad.
that's a good point too. That's a good point too. I really feel like they're against changing printed costs though. All right. So the next rare card, Elemental Ranger Ice Fusion, Cold Wave, 1 for 5, 3 black, standard Lexi shenanigans. If Cold Wave was fused, cards and activated abilities cost opposing heroes an additional resource this turn. Jim, we're gonna kick it up to you. What do you think? What do you think about Cold Wave?
This one is short and sweet. It's a sideboarded card against control decks. And that's about it. I take it out of every other matchup. And if I am suspicious that I'm playing against a heavy control variant, I want this in my deck. It's great. If I am not, and if I know I'm playing against an aggro deck or someone that does not run a lot of defense reactions, then this card comes out and I can find a different option. But does it make the cut of my Icy Lex? Is it in my list? Absolutely. It's not played in every game. Its ability is good in very niche situations, or specific. I don't want to say niche, but specific situations. So good card, just not something that is like the backbone of the deck. Would you guys
Sure.
agree?
Sam, what do you think?
I like this one more than the other one. Just for the reason it's matchup dependent, right? It's not amazing in everything, like Jim said, but like my mind comes to like Oldhim if he wants to use his shield or use any like the Crown of Seeds or something like that. That's all costing 2. Any defense reactions, you use this and Heart of Ice that cost 2. You basically shutting down any kind of defense reactions. Like it's just a really powerful card against those matchups. Um, yeah, it's not for everything, but to me, this card is like Exude Confidence. The love I have for Exude Confidence. I don't run that card against every matchup, but the matchups I do, it just feels amazing.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. Also, really quick side note, Oldham's shield is not affected by this card or Heart
It's
of
not.
Ice.
Yep,
Because
that's
there's
correct.
This Crown of Seeds is that?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, it
Crown of
is.
Seeds is, but when you played this, they could respond with Crown of Seeds, I believe, before the text kicks off, correct?
That's true.
Yes.
That's correct.
So then, because in my head, you think like, oh, Heart of Ice and Crown of or Cold Wave would do well against a Prism, but before you even when you declare your intent or your action, they can respond prior to then that increase of cost. However, if take the Prism or the anything instant out of it, just the
This
pure
is good this is good into Prism, I think.
yeah, just the pure fact that it's increasing the cost of defense reactions, and activated abilities, like Sam said, is outstanding. That's why it's a rare, but yep, matchup.
This forces a Prism player to play an aura maybe before they were comfortable with
and
playing
English.
it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really good into Prism.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic for
Or
Prism.
at least makes the cut. Heart of Ice, I think, is better into Prism because they take
Yeah,
they want to aura at the end of your turn, and
that's generically
let
better
them
than
do it,
Prism.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you probably run both.
I played the Prism guy yesterday,
Yeah.
and I ran Heart of Ice and this card.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, makes sense.
That call. Sam, I'm going to kick this one to you. We're getting into the Majestics now, finally. And we're going to start off with Ice Storm. And the reason I'm going to start with you, Sam, is because you've played a little bit of Briar. And this is a dual fusion card. So I'm interested to see, how viable are dual fusion cards and all that stuff. So Ice Storm is a 0 cost. It only blocks for 2. Elemental Ranger action. It's an Ice and Lightning fusion. So you have to have both cards here in order to trigger the additional ability, which we'll talk about. So your next arrow, this attack gains +3. So that's generic. You don't have to fuse in order to get that, which is pretty decent for a 0 cost. If Ice Storm was fused, your next arrow attack this turn gains, if this hits a hero, deal 1 damage to them. And whenever this attack deals damage to a hero, create that many Frostbite tokens under their control. So if you do 5 damage to them, you create 5 Frostbites under their control, which that seems crazy. And it has go again. So, Sam, what are your thoughts on Ice Storm? Is it decent? Is it reliable? Like, what do we think here?
I think of any of the instant or the miracle double fusion cards. I think this is probably the most viable just because it has a base stat that is beneficial. It's basically nimblism and it costs 0, which is just good in general. You might want to play it just for the dream, but I think realistically expecting to get this off consistently is just improbable and inconsistent. And I just don't think to play it for the fused effect, I don't think that's worth it. You might be better off. I mean, I guess you could play it despite that, but I think it's obviously very build dependent, and I just don't think it makes the cut for everything.
Jim, what do you think about Ice Storm?
So I agree. When I was tinkering around with the hybrid build, which is exponentially harder to construct, I was getting it off frequently, but the hybrid builds seem to be a lot weaker and harder to make in general. However, if you do want to go down that route and that's something that you're passionate about, I do think you play this card then because it is extremely strong if you could get it, and does have a base, like you said, where it's basically a nimblism in a situation where you can't get the double fuse. Obviously, if you're going down a solo route, this is not in your list. But am I glad it exists? Absolutely. I think it's got a great ability, and who knows, maybe smarter people than I will come up with a great hybrid list where this gets utilized. I think it's cool, and I'm glad they made it.
Levi, what do you think? Is it double fusion? At least in Lexi, is it viable?
Is it viable to do it consistently? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Just like Sam was saying. But the other thing Sam mentioned, which I was gonna say, but he got to go first, is the fact that it's just a good card on its own, or a solid card. When you compare it to like Blossoming Spellblade, which is the Briar's double fusion, it's just a lot better. Blossoming Spellblade is bad if it's not fused. It's
That's
just a
bad.
2 for 6.
I think Oak and Old is okay, not fused.
Yeah.
It's a 3
and-
for 7.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think that this would likely see play in like an ice list, and there are good lightning cards that synergize well with an ice list. Stuff like Lightning Press.
Yeah,
Lightning
for
Press
sure.
is great. It doesn't matter that it's not an ice card. So I think you are able to run that in addition to the Pulse with a few targets. I think there's a real consideration to put this in, even if you're not planning on fusing it every time, because when it does get fused, it's just insane.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
it's bananas. Yeah.
I agree 100% that Lightning Press is the only lightning card in my deck, and like you said, so the dream could happen. Then it would just be dedicating how many slots to Ice Storm are you going to dedicate to possibly get the dream. But yeah, I kind of agree with Levi there. If you're running ice, you got a shot. If you're running lightning, you probably don't play it at all.
Lightning Press
Yep.
is just objectively insane.
Mhm.
All right, moving on to her next Majestic here. We have Light It Up. It's a 1 for 4, 3 block. It's a yellow pitch. Lexi specialization, so you can only ever run it with her. Lightning Fusion. If Lighted Up was fused, it gains, if this hits a hero, deal 1 damage to them for each equipment they control. If Lighted Up deals damage to a hero equal to or greater than the number of equipment they control lose and cannot gain activated abilities until the end of their turn. I'm going to take this one because I was playing this, for a little bit in my testing. This card's insane. This card is insane. It's so threatening. If you can somehow give it go again, I mean, if you're playing a Lightning Lexi build, chances are you already have go again through her ability flipping a lightning card from Arsenal, and then playing this card for a +1 with go again as a 1 for 5, and then potentially like one of the most disrespectful things that I love doing is flipping over a lightning press and playing this with Voltaire for +1 and then playing this outright. So it's a 1 for 5 with go again. And the lightning press is just basically a middle finger in Arsenal saying if you don't overblock this, you're just fucked, which is the best thing. It's so disrespectful.
Yeah,
I
or
love this
fusing it
card.
with the lightning press.
Yeah, like
You just
fusing
hold it out on the
just,
table.
You just show it. Like it's the coolest thing. Like this card is absolutely insane. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Levi, do you have any differing opinions there?
No, that's exactly the same opinion. Although I guess the only slight difference is I like ending my turn with this.
Yeah, you end it. Yeah.
Because like throughout the turn they're going, okay, I'm gonna block. Okay, that's all I want to commit. I know what I have left in my hand, and this is what I'm gonna use next turn. And all of a sudden you go, all right, I'm swinging for 4. If it hits, you're taking 10 because I had a ball lightning or something or a frazzle. And they go, I can't just take 10. And then you reveal a lightning press, and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I guess I'll die. Like,
it's Scoop City. Sam,
Yeah.
what do you think about this thing? You light it up, huh? That much?
Dude, this card is the nuts. Like
It's the nuts.
it makes me mad, like physically ill every time he plays this, and he's just like, "Oh, light it up for 4, threatening 15." It's like, it's like
So-
okay,
So
sure.
For context on that, when those happen, it's because I've played like an Electrify at the start of the turn, and he blocked out all my other attacks, and so he's got like 1 card left in hand, and I go, light it up for 4, threat. It's with 2 Ball Lightnings, comes in for 6, plus 2 pieces of equipment. It's 4 more, and then the Electrify is another 5, threatening 15, and he's like,
Good game.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hate this card so much. I was playing Katsu against him, and I had my Breeze Rider boots, and I hit him, and I've said, "How many lighted ups do you have in grave?" Because I was on like sub 10 or whatever, and he's like, "I have 1." I'm like, "Break Breeze Rider boots, pass," just
Yeah,
because I literally
yeah,
just
you
could not
can't take the
afford
additional.
to take the additional damage. It's just like,
yeah.
The thing
it's
I
just
love
so
about this
good.
card, though, right? The thing I love about this card over Snapshot is this card still feels fair. Like this card is very good, but I wouldn't say that this card is a mess. Like I don't think this was a misstep on their part. This card feels extremely strong, and if you have the patience to set it up, it's even better. But I don't think it's busted. Sam, I don't know if you can agree with that or not, but it feels fine to me. But it's
Yeah.
extremely incredible.
No,
Yeah.
it's a fair card. I mean, it's definitely you can play around it. It's not like it's insanely busted. It just is like, it's like maybe to command and conquer levels, but maybe a little more, just for the how bad it feels when it's dropped on you, and there's just nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Jim's laptop is singing on its own there. If you guys are getting serenaded by the fan on his laptop, but Jim, do you have any parting words about the lighted up?
No, they can't hear that because I mute myself. They can't hear the
You
laptop.
haven't been muted this whole time, have you
No, you silly boy. It's to you. It will never be muted
been? So
because
it's just annoying for me.
Yes, we are communicating via the Discord, but on my
Ah.
recording software, they cannot hear it.
Technology, friends.
Aha.
Technology.
So nothing needs to be said from me that you guys didn't already say. I think that in a hybrid build, this would be so cool of a card to somehow give Dominate. Oh my gosh. If you were to force them to have to take this, that would be amazing. And super scary, but it is cool. I like whenever the specialization card is extremely strong. I think that's fun. And it really makes, like, when Red in the Ledger was the thing, you were like, ooh, that's my card with Azalea, and it's how it should be. The specialization just feels so strong. And that is always so much fun. And it's awesome. So,
Like steel blade supremacy.
Yeah,
You know, for we fellow Dorinthia players.
yeah.
I got Sand Sketch Plan.
That's hey.
That one.
That's equally as busted.
No, but is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is it
man.
Alpha
Steel blade
Rampage
supremacy.
one?
Alpha Rampage, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to
you're right.
her final majestic here. A blue pitch. Ooh. Frostlock, 1 for 3. Ooh, this card sucks ass. 3 block. Ice Fusion. Cards and activate abilities cost opposing heroes an additional 1 this turn, which that does not have to be fused in order to get that. Seems good. If it was fused, it gains +1, so 1 for 4. And if this hits a hero until the end of their turn, it can't pitch or play cards with base cost 0. Just take it away.
This is a great arrow for the fact that it's blue. So it's going to be in all of my ice lists. And then it's extremely amazing in a mirror and or against Katsu or any aggro deck that's going to spew zeros at you or want to pitch zero-costed cards. So Katsu wants to pitch a blue 0 or, all that jazz. So this card's awesome. And then it's not so good against, Prism and Old Man and Bravo, where they're not really pitching or playing zero-costed cards anyway. So you could sideboard it out if you want, but I keep it in just because it's a blue arrow that blocks for 3 and pitches for 3 and has good value. So it takes a slot in my deck, and if I do ever just play it, you don't have to fuse it to get that top ability. Cards and activated abilities, which is the Cold Wave ability. So it gets the Cold Wave ability built in without having to fuse. So that's awesome. Just the cold wave ability without having to fuse. And then the bottom part is even better if you can pull it off. And in the right circumstance, the bottom part is outstanding. But I think it just stays in your deck, and the art is really cool. I wonder if that guy's like, some type of ancient that was chained down and then shot with an ice arrow in the heart, and it froze him there for all of eternity. It looks cool.
This is another card that I think benefits from the little crossover that Ice Lexi gets to benefit from with Lightning Press. Because, if you're running strictly Ice and you're running Voltaire, you don't necessarily, I mean, you can get this up to a 1 for 5, which is, I mean, it's still good, but they can block it with a card and equipment. But Lightning Press and then being able to turn off their zeros seems very strong. So, in my opinion, this card just seems really good with setup. And like Jim was alluding to, you don't hate a blue pitch for 3, even if you're not necessarily against a Katsu, where this could really mess them up, or potentially a chain. Even if you're against Oldham, if you're against Bravo, yes, this card really doesn't have as much utility, but it is still a blue pitch for 3 block, which is, those are the numbers that we look for.
Yeah, I think it's a solid card. And I think it threatens where you should maybe have to block it, even if it's a 3 damage or whatever. But it's just an all-around pretty balanced card. But again, if it's thrown at me and I don't really care, I'll just take the arrow and my frostbites and just pass my turn, like I would do with any of the frostbite cards that I feel are not as engaging. But I realize maybe I feel that way because I'm always rolling 1s with Rhinar, so I'm used to just passing my turn and not doing anything. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just a really solid card.
Yeah, I think one of the strong points to mention is just that it gains 1 attack if it's fused. So traditionally, for our arrows, we've seen 1 for 5 is the baseline for red, and then yellows a lot of times make the cut just because you need some extra pitch, and 4 still threatens the on hit as a yellow, so the yellow 1 for 4. This is kind of our first option we've had as a pseudo blue 1 for 4.
Yeah.
Because typically for that 1 for 4 slot, you're running a yellow. So just having the blue available is really nice because I guess, all our other blue arrows are 1 for 3s. So I think, and the fact that it gets that their attacks cost, or their cards cost an extra resource without needing to fuse or anything, I think it's just a really good card. And obviously, like we'd mentioned, the decks that it really hurts. Like they just can't play the game.
Yeah, which is fun. We like when people can't play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Sam really likes when he can't play the game. All right, moving on. Hopefully our graphics guy got the memo here. We're gonna skip past the arrow, and we're gonna go to the Pulse of Volthaven, the other majestic that Lexi has the access to. Pulse of Volthaven is a 0-cost red card. Doesn't block. It's a lightning ice instant. So there's your dual fusion right there. Beautiful art. I mean, Jesus. It's a legendary card, which means you can only play one of them, so you can't have a full play set, which is nice for your wallet. Your next lightning, ice, or elemental attack this turn gains +4. So extremely strong 0-cost. We have not seen a 0-cost +4, which is bananas, but it is fitting because this card is supposed to be, extremely strong. All of the pulse cards are that way. Sam, I'm going to kick it up to you. What do you think about this card? Obviously this card has tremendous utility because of the dual fuse ability. But yeah, the 0 for +4 instant ability. What do we think here?
I'm glad you let me go first because I
You're
had some
welcome.
choice things I wanted to say about it.
Yes.
I think that this is the best dual fusion card of the 3. It's not even close. What this allows Lexi to do is just criminal. Between not only the damage, which was just a slap in the face, but just alone the fact where you can arsenal it and then flip it with Lexi's ability and get go again and a frostbite and a +4.
It's
It's just
disrespectful.
it's just insane. Like LSS is just rubbing Lexi's feet at this point. It's just I don't understand. They're like, yeah, let's make Azalea, and then we didn't do her right, so let's just crank Lexi all the way to the other end. So
Yeah.
it's just It's just a disrespectful card. Like it's just really strong.
This
I
card's
just
fucked up.
I wish that they had balanced the power level of the other ones so it doesn't feel as bad playing Pulse of Candlehold when you're staring at a Pulse of Volt Haven across from you. But yeah, it's just a strong, strong card in
I
Lexi.
I think Candlehold is the worst of the three. I actually like the other one, Eisenloft.
Yeah.
Eisenloft is good. I think Eisenloft's very good. A blue D react for 6 with Oldham who wants to pitch. I think that's very good. But I agree with you. I think this is the best of the three. I think Candlehold is probably by far the worst. Um, but yeah, the +4 is just bananas. And like, especially coming from Lexi, who wants to arsenal stuff anyway. Like, if you have the face up, you arsenal this card face down. Now you have a 6 card hand to play with, and you're getting a frostbite and a go again automatically just from revealing this on top of a +4. It's disrespectful. I mean, this card's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know how much more there's to say about it. It like we haven't ever seen a 0 for 4 before this set. I suppose now we have Invigorate, which I guess is technically a 0 for 4. The only issue is that it requires the fusing, and it isn't a card that can be used to reveal for fusing. Obviously, Pulse doesn't have either of those issues. Another really nice one that I like about it is it's a buff that, while it has the instant keyword, it can't be used to target an attack that's already been declared.
That's
But the
correct.
fact that it has the instant keyword allows you to play it without breaking a chain, which is really relevant when you have stuff like Ball Lightning, where you want to play the Ball Lightning, and then later on you want to buff something later on in the chain. This is one of the few buffs that you can actually play without breaking the chain, and then buff something later on. So I think the versatility is really strong. And I guess technically, if you really wanted to, you could use it on on something blocking. Or no, I take that back. That's only ignore me. That's only Lightning Press for Prism.
We'll edit that out. We'll
Yeah.
edit that out in post.
Don't let me be an idiot.
All right. Jim, I assume you're just gonna say ditto to what the three of us said there. I mean, the card's fucking stupid. All right. Moving on here to the weaponry that Miss Lexi has at her disposal. We're gonna start off with the token card of the sets. We're gonna start off with Shiver. Shiver is a fine token, probably I shouldn't say that because the Runeblade one is pretty crazy. I forgot what that's called off the top of my head. But the Shiver once per turn instant is 1 resource. You may put an arrow card from your hand face up in an empty arsenal slot that you control. And then if you do choose one, the attack or the arrow gains +1 until the end of turn, or that arrow gains dominate until the end of turn. So Shiver, pretty good. Some solid utility. Great and sealed because of the dominate on at will here. Jim, what do you think about Shiver?
Very good and sealed in draft. I was gonna say when I first was playing with Shiver, I was having so much fun because as an Azalea player before, I used to be like, wait, do you know how hard I used to have to work to get Dominate? I used to have to flip off the top and do a backflip and sing and dance, and then I'd get a card to have Dominate. And you're telling me I can just load this and choose it? I was like, wow, that's awesome. I'll play a couple of buffs. I'll just pick Dominate, and we'll go from there. So yeah, if you're just trying to push damage and you have a cool on hit effect, not so much the on hit effects that come in this set, but I think more so like with any of the older arrows that were in previous sets, just to get a dominate and then trigger an on hit effect, it's pretty cool. But once we get to Voltaire, you see the upside of that weapon as well. But as far as common token options go, this is just fine in my opinion.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have like too much more to add to it. I mean, it's just a strong weapon. It's really good and sealed. Yeah, like Jim said, the fact that you can just instant dominate anything is just really strong. It's just an all-around good card. I like it a lot. I think it's a pretty fair ranger bow in the context that it can be used in. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Levi,
Yeah.
opinions on
Yeah.
Shiva?
I think on paper it's a good card. I think in practice I think as people who have been testing have seen it, it doesn't flow quite as well as you would like.
It's lacking.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, the cold foil also looks really good. That's the other upside of it. But yeah, it's a solid bow.
Well,
But I think
that was a
outshined by Voltaire.
subtle flex over there from Levi winning an armory, having a cold foil shiver.
I mean, I said that as soon as they showed the pictures of it when they announced it.
That
But
is true.
sure.
That's fair.
Either way, it's yeah, I think it's fine, but I think it's outshined by the one we'll talk about next.
Oh, we're going to Voltaire Strike Twice, baby. So Voltaire Strike Twice is the majestic bow from the set. Twice per turn instant, one resource. So twice per turn instant. That's something that we haven't seen printed, which is pretty cool. One resource, you may put an arrow card from your hand face up into an empty arsenal slot that you control if you do choose one. So similar ability to Shiver. You just pay a resource, but you get to do this twice. So that arrow either gets +1 until the end of turn, same mode as Shiver, or that arrow gains go again until the end of turn. So automatically your mind goes to, wow, this card's gonna go wide as heck. Levi, we're gonna start with you since you left off on Shiver. Why is Voltaire, or why does kind of Shiver pale in comparison to Voltaire?
Yeah, so one thing as a Ranger player that we've always seen was this issue of we didn't have good ways of playing multiple arrows in a turn. Part of it was we didn't have good ways of loading consistently, and we also didn't have good ways of giving our arrows go again consistently. Voltaire kind of fixes both issues at the same time. So it gives you access to a more aggressive game plan. I think previously Ranger got kind of pigeonholed into either a ton of buffs or a defensive game plan or a combination thereof, because you just couldn't throw out lots of arrows wide. There just wasn't the mechanics in place to do it. So finally having that option is really strong here. And it also gives Three of a Kind, a card we saw, I believe it's out of Arcane Rising.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. It gives us ways to use up larger amounts of cards in hand. So it gives like things like Three of a Kind a lot more value. But yeah, I think it's just the better of the two bows by far.
Yeah, I agree.
The ability to actually use your hand, because I guess previously we'd seen you would draw a hand with like 3 arrows and you'd go, crap, I can only fire one, and I'm just kind of stuck with them. And I had mentioned it earlier, arsenaling arrows traditionally has been bad because you want to be able to load them with the bow and use them that turn. So yeah, just options as far as using more than one arrow in your hand is something that the range class needed, and that's what Voltaire does.
Yep. James?
Ditto, and we are going to talk about New Horizon next. So when you combined this with New Horizon, and like Levi said, allowing us to play cards like Three of a Kind, which is very Azalea designed because it's cards, and she seemed to be like the Pit's assassin and all that jazz. So let's make that card actually do something rather than collect dust in a binder. It was awesome. So having the option to shoot twice in a turn is great, and then when you realize that synergizes so well with either the ice or lightning arrows that have been fused for the remainder of the turn when something deals damage or when something hits, you see the upside is too high to not play this weapon unless you're going degen, snapshot, Death Dealer. However, Death Dealer is still amazing. Like, even by itself, the old bow is great. I look at Voltaire as like, oh, this is where I want to be. It's beautiful. It's cool. It's her bow. And I have a huge pet peeve in this game. And my biggest pet peeve in this game is if their majestic weapon is for their made for the character, that should be their best option. Nothing made me more sad than when Chain people played Nebula Blade. I mean, it is the better card, but it's like then Chain's weapon should have been designed better, because you should play the weapon that the character in the lore and in their artwork.
It's so Star
uses.
Wars. Like, this is their lightsaber, or this is the weapon that they use.
Why is that? Why does that make me weird? I feel like that is a common thing, and so I'm glad that this is good because it makes me want to use it, and it's her bow, and so that's a happy feeling all around. Great card.
I think people probably agree with you more or less. The people that aren't like the robot hyper competitives, but then the robot hyper competitives are like, you know what? Who cares? This is the best option. So
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think there's two different mindsets.
I respect playing the best option.
I float more in like towards the robots than I do towards like the lore nerds like you, but I can see both sides. I don't think that's a wrong thing to say.
I feel you, Jim. Don't worry. I daydream about Katsu slicing Prism up with Kadachi.
The Edge of Lime, you mean?
Yeah.
The Edge of
No,
Lime.
that's Ira's. That's Ira's weapon.
Yeah, no one likes her.
Trash card.
Voltaire is a good card.
It is a good card, yeah.
It might edge on being too good. I'm not sure yet. I want to see how it plays a little bit more, but it does feel tuned pretty high. So
it's no Duskblade.
Yeah, it's no Duskblade.
Stupid ass card. All right,
but it's definitely good.
Sorry, really quick. I wanted to mention one thing on those weapons. You guys were talking about how we like to see weapons be like their majestic being their best option. I actually really like seeing when a character has multiple options for weapons, and
I think she
leading
does.
leading completely different builds. So like when Dorinthia had Dawnblade or hatchets, you had Bolton with sabers or Raiden. Those are really interesting to me. I like seeing multiple things instead of your opponent reveals their hero and you know what weapon they're playing.
That's a great point, because I think Lexi might be the first hero where I think legitimately, I think for sure Voltaire and Death Dealer, and then Shiver. Honestly, there could be a justification there. I mean, like Bolton Sabers was gimmicky. It was good, yes, but it was gimmicky versus Raiden. But this is the first time where I think 3 different builds could potentially be very good. And that's, I mean, I haven't really tested Oldham with Anathos yet. I don't know if that's a thing. But, like, this is the first time where I think 3, like, Dorinthia Hatchets, again, gimmicky. This is like, I think there's 3 legitimate builds here where you can justify all 3, which is cool.
I didn't want to come off as I don't like when they don't have other options. I do like when you have multiple avenues and options and weapons. I just like when the thematic weapon is strong.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, so we're going to move on now to the legendary of the set. And dare I say, this was the chase legendary, or it's slowly becoming the chase legendary of the set. Sam's immediately shaking his head. I think this might be, like, based on prices between this or, like, Rampart or the Ram's Head. Those are probably the 2 chase legendaries of the set. But we're going to go to New Horizon, of course. And it naturally, of course, because the Ranger class can't have everything good. This is another headpiece, so it replaces the other legendary that they had. New Horizon says, while you have a face-up card in your arsenal, you have an additional arsenal zone. Game-breaking. When New Horizon is destroyed, destroy everything in your arsenal. It has Blade Break because, of course, it does, but this one blocks for 2, which is nice. So, this card, I believe, in my opinion, is the enabler to all things Lexi. You have to have this card, I think, if you want to play Lexi at a high level. Just because, 6 card with her flippability automatically built into her hero. I just think that you're going to, want this card. Yes, you could probably get away with other cards, but I in a similar trend to what we saw in Monarch, especially with Prism, with Phantasmal Footsteps. If you're interested in playing Lexi competitively, in my humble opinion, you have to have this card. This card is just, it's great. It's absolutely insane. Sam, what do you think about New Horizon here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really strong card. It opens up so many new doors for Ranger that weren't possible before. I think that it makes my Command and Conquers for 15 feel even better. So Briar is definitely good in that respect. But other than that, Blocking for 2 is really strong. They shouldn't have done that. They should have just left that with Mask of Momentum because that card wasn't good enough. And other than that, I think it expands options for Ranger, and it makes her be able to play completely different than she has ever been able to do before.
Anybody else want to
Yeah,
speak
no.
on New
So
Horizon?
it's interesting. One thing Rangers always struggled with is the manipulation of the Arsenal zone and getting stuck with something in the arsenal. So New Horizon has given you additional options, especially with the new bows, being able to target that open arsenal spot. It's been really cool. Just seeing that it has reduced some of the like clunkiness that Ranger has felt. The other interesting thing that we brought up was that the fact that it blocks for 2. It's really funny because you wouldn't have expected to until you realize that they also printed exposed the elements in this set. And if it blocked for 1, the salt on some ranger's face when an Oldhim uses that to kill their New Horizon and blow up 2 arsenal slots and their headpiece. That would
That
just
felt
be
so
absurd.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
felt
like they
so
had to give
bad.
it 2. They can't give it 0 or 1.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, James, I'm going to start with you on this next one here. We're going to move to just generic Ranger rares here. We have a card that I haven't seen played all too often. I don't know if you guys are experimenting with or what, but we're talking about Overflex. So Overflex is a 1-cost Ranger action, only blocks for 2. The red version says your next arrow attack this turn gains +4 with reload and go again. Jim, what do you think about this card?
Prior to Overflex, I just want to say I want to know more about the lady on New Horizon. Where's she
Okay.
from? What does she do? I'd like to see some cosplay. Let's get after it. Anyways, Overflex, yeah. He's got like a arrow tied to a rope. He's like fishing. She's like fishing or something.
What are we doing?
Which really interesting. He's just chilling on rocks. What really wide stance here? Who knows what's he aiming for? You think he'd be aiming at the fish? He's like aiming in the air. I don't know what's going on. But I think this is good in sealed and draft. +4, +1 reload is awesome. But this is not something that I want to play in my current Lexis. I do see value in the pre-buffs. I don't like to pay for something that's not an arrow unless I'm getting a draw from it, like Electrify or Polar Blast. But overall, pretty good card. I'm glad it comes with the reload clause. And I think it's going to be good in Azalea decks, and like I said, in sealed and draft. Just not something that I'm currently playing or testing, but perhaps I'm missing the boat on it. I don't know.
I don't know. I think this card's poopy. Just me, though.
Yeah, I think this card is good in Azalea.
Yeah.
But as far as in Lexi, which is what we're talking about, I don't think it's very good. I don't want to be running buffs that aren't lightning or ice cards. And like Jim said, I also don't want to be paying for my buffs. So I think you just have better options than 1 for 4 in Lexi as far as enabling your turn and fusing and just overall synergy.
Jim just got my text. I'm going to intro the next card, and then I am going to take probably a 5-minute breather here.
Here, I will. Ryan is gonna take a 5-minute breather, and then I'll intro. Ryan, go for it, man.
Thanks.
I got you. You go
yeah.
go do something mysterious and come back. All right.
Yeah, I'll be back.
While our friend goes somewhere and to take care of some business, we have on the screen pulled up Bolton Shot, which is a rare arrow, generic ranger card that came out in this set, and it reads as a 0 cost while Bolton Shot's base damage is greater than its when Bolton Shot's damage is greater than its base, it has go again, and if this hits, reload. Defense for 3, and the red attacks for 4. I bet you Levi's going to agree with me. This is my new favorite Ranger arrow non-elemental deck, like auto include reds and yellows in, because like Levi has said in the past, we're looking at reds as usually 1 for 5s, then 1 for 4s in yellow, and if you are playing Voltaire and Shiver, you can choose +1, give this arrow then go again, and it is a 0 for 5 then with go again, and on hit, threaten a reload. So that's a lot of value for a 0 costed card when the only prerequisite needing to meet is that its damage is greater than its base. And when your bow can provide that to you, it's extremely easy to achieve. That was really fast. That was really fast for. I thought you'd be gone for a lot longer than that.
And I thought so too, but I'm here. Here we go.
So we're talking about Bolt and Shot. Levi, do you agree with me? Do you love this card as much as I do?
Yeah, it was funny. When it was released, everyone was all excited about it, and I was like, it's not going to be that good. I was wrong. Card's really good, especially with Voltaire. The fact that you get both. You get both the go again and the +1 on this card. And like you mentioned, it's a 0 cost. And also the fact that it can reload. It makes three of a kind hands so much better, because all of a sudden this becomes a card that they have to block. It's coming in for 5, and if they don't block it, now you get to play an extra card out of that three of a kind hand. Yeah, card's just really good, and I think it just makes the cut in almost every Ranger list.
I cannot agree enough with what you just said about the 3 of a kind. My dream scenario would be in a 3 of a kind hand, playing something like a Blizzard Bolt first, fusing it, giving it go again, playing a Bolt and Shot, giving it +1. It then triggers go again, the on hit from the Blizzard Bolt, and the reload on hit. And then, so if they don't block this Bolt and Shot, I'm going to probably shoot another arrow at you, and that is something you don't want to happen. So extremely threatening, above average ability on this arrow itself. I could see people even getting away with, if you wanted to play the blues, more power to you. I mean, this card is that awesome. I'm glad it's a rare, and it kind of makes up for the lack of cool arrows prior in just base Ranger. Sam,
Yeah.
any thoughts?
I think it's a super cool card. It's definitely my second favorite Ranger card that came out this set, and I think the artwork is sick too. I'm a big Helsing fan, and that dude just reminds me of someone from like Van Helsing or something. But yeah, I just love the card all around. Everything about it, really cool.
Did you guys touch on the fact that it has Bolton in its name, and it's also Bolton's ability because the base is higher than, or the attack's higher than the base, and it has go again.
No, I was gonna bring that up, but yeah, it's just an awesome little piece of flavor that they added to it.
How cheeky is that? You gotta love that.
I didn't
All right.
notice. I didn't notice that until now. That's pretty cool. All right. Now that you are back, we are moving on to Seek and Destroy. I'll let you take over.
Thank you, sir, for holding on the fort while I was, visiting the Iron Throne. Seek and Destroy. Majestic here, generic ranger, 0 cost. Your next arrow attack this turn gains +3, and if this hits a hero at the beginning of their next end phase, they discard all cards in their hand and destroy all cards in their arsenal. That seems pretty vicious. Sam, what do we think about Seek and Destroy here?
This is my favorite Ranger card that got released by far, and it's also one of my favorite cards in the whole set. It's just such a cool card that puts your opponent in such an awkward position. It reminds me a lot of Command and Conquer, which is my favorite card in the game. I just love the fact that it's not game breaking, but it's disruptive enough to cause annoyance and actual problems, because it puts you in the awkward situation of either I have to just play out my whole hand this turn and I can't get an arsenal, or I have to block appropriately because I know at the end of my turn, if I haven't used any cards, I'm going to have to just discard them. So it presents you with two really interesting questions, and you can play around it. That's the cool part, because if I have a really aggressive hand and I know I'm not going to want to keep any of it, it's like, it's fine. I'll just take it and then I can play out my whole hand. And I love that it allows that open-endedness and that way to respond to it while still being a really strong card.
Now, Levi, is this making its way into your Lexi list?
I don't think it makes the cut in a lot of the Lexi lists. I think it's a really good card, especially in Azalea. But
I was saying that all from the perspective of Azalea,
For sure.
not
No,
Lexi.
for
yeah,
sure. No, that's why I'm like
Yeah.
switching the mindset.
yeah. Again, it's really good, but we come down to the issue of that I mentioned with Overflex is I don't want to play buffs that aren't lightning or ice, or are gonna play into that elemental fuse strategy. This is just a 0 buff 3, and I mean, you could dream about the amazing turn where you somehow get like a seek and destroy with ice storm, and then you somehow like give them 10 frostbite tokens and then make them discard their hand because they couldn't play anything. But like, just realistically, I don't think this card meshes and synergizes with enough other cards in the deck to make it make the cut in Lexi.
Sure. Do you have many differing thoughts?
I will not provide anything differing except for the fact that the artwork on it is cool too. It's a throwback to Bay, and it looks like she's, over listening to some guy who's gotten himself into a pickle with some giant orc man, and she's ready to just pop all of them, take all their money, and dip. And that's just the bad bitch that Azalea is. So I'm just.
She's seeking and she's
Yeah,
about to destroy.
she's seeking and destroying, and somebody's paying her to assassinate, and that's what she wants to do. And she's got Death Dealer sitting there, and she's ready to rock and roll. So, card is awesome, art is cool, and that's how you get Jim to be a happy boy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So we're gonna move on to just lightning and ice generics. I know this has been going on for a long time here, so we'll try to fly through this section here. So each person is just gonna bring up one lightning card, one ice card that they really like from this set. We'll start with Jim here from the lightning variety or the lightning side of things. And finally, we've been alluding to it for the last hour and a half. So we might as well finally talk about, the power of it. But we're going to talk about Shock Charmers. So Shock Charmers are a legendary card. It's the arms of the set for Lightning. It is a 0 block Lightning or legendary arm piece, which is 0 block. You have to throw a red flag. Why would you do that? Hold on there, kids. It is an instant ability. Spend 2 resources. The next time an attack action card you control hits this turn, it deals 1 damage to them. So this is where that weird like hit and damage thing kind of differs. But think of this almost as like a Seeds of Agony. This is adding another source of damage to a card. So any card that has an on hit, such as if this card hits, it creates a frostbite, or if this card deals damage, it creates a frostbite. So if that card were to deal damage to your opponent, and then you were to use the Shock Charmer instant to deal an additional damage, that ability would proc twice. So instead of creating 1 frostbite, they would create 2 frostbites. So that's where this card kind of gets out of control. It also adds damage late game, where it kind of locks them out. So if they are down to 1 or 2 health, you don't get to just use this once per turn. You can pop this as long as you have the resources multiple times per turn, granted that the card you're playing it is hitting that hero. So this card is pretty bananas. I feel like as of right now, at least in my opinion, the general public, are feeling this card out. They're not really, giving this card the respect it needs based on prices and stuff that we're seeing online. But I think this card is extremely strong. I think this is an absolute Lexi staple. But Jim, this was your card. I feel like I've kind of said a lot here, but we'll go. And why do you like Shock Charmers?
It is amazing. I've never changed my tune so quick, kind of like how Levi said with Bolt and Shot. When I first saw this, when the set was spoiled, I was like I said, I have a small brain, and so I have to play things and feel them and actually see it to understand a card's value. And I thought it was bad, and now that I've played with it, I don't want to play a game without it. The Spell Void 2 at the end of a game is relevant, which is great. The ability, if you want to look at it, is a built-in frazzle, right? A 2 a 2 cost for any amount of time per turn frazzle, right? Because frazzle is the same thing. Like it deals 1, and that whenever
That's Buzzbolt.
it's a
Buzzbolt.
buzzbolt. It's a buzzbolt. I knew it was one of them. So it's like a built-in buzzbolt, which then, like Ryan said, procs the ability on cards again, which not in just Lexi, and I know this is a Lexi video, but this is insane in Briar too, because that's how she generates embodiments of Earth. And so this thing not only helps Lexi generate either more damage or more frostbites or more on hits, it helps Briar generate more embodiments of Earth. And overall, this Lightning Legendary feels like they got the ball. They got it absolutely right on this one. Both Lexi and Briar should probably be playing this card every game, for the most part. This is a legendary that feels like a legendary, and I'm so happy it exists. If you haven't played with it yet, and you have read it, and you kind of are like on the fence about it, play with it, and I bet you will change your tune. Levi, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm kind of in that spot where I haven't really played with it extensively, but I'm also in the camp where reading it, it's like that doesn't seem quite as good as other people might think. But everyone who's played with it has said it's great, so I haven't played with it, so it's hard for me to judge it fairly. But in my opinion, it doesn't seem as crazy as I'd like, but I'm probably wrong on that one, just based on what I'm seeing.
I
Oh.
I would agree. It's one of those that reading it, you're like, this doesn't seem strong at all. But then in practice, it has definitely played stronger than I initially thought.
And I'll also add in that if they give you the old Arsenal pass and you hate your hand, you can proc this BS amount of times to draw new cards turn 1, because it's an instant and it's not once per turn. So they give you the old Arsenal pass, and you hate your hand, you can shock charmer, draw a new hand, and that in itself is a cool ability, and really strong.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Sam, any parting thoughts on shock charmers?
I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it. I guess in both circumstances, yes, because I haven't really played against it that extensively yet, so I really don't know. I definitely do not think this is a card for Briar. I think it's really great for Lexi, but I don't see it practically working in Briar at this point in time.
All right, next.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Next electric card, lightning card that we're going to go into. Levi, this is one of yours that you're very high on. And that is Ball Lightning. So the red version of Ball Lightning is a 0 for 3 with Go Again. Does not block. Has a 0 block, which is interesting. Whenever a lightning or elemental action card would deal damage this combat chain, instead it deals that much +1. And this is not a fuse card. This is just a lightning action. So you use this to fuse other cards. You don't have to reveal anything in order to get that ability. It just has that ability. So it is annoying as hell. Levi, why is this card the card that you wanted to focus on for lightning?
Yeah, it's a really interesting card. Obviously, not blocking is not great, but the fact that similar to what we were talking about with the fused arrows before, is it's going to make all of your attacks for the rest of the turn, well, assuming you don't break the chain on this one, more threatening. And it kind of just demands a block, barring like the blue one. Sometimes the yellow can just get an equipment, but most of the time they need to throw something in front of it, otherwise they're taking some damage. They also stack really well. If you play 2 of these, all of a sudden the rest of your attacks on the chain are going to be doing 2 extra. The other big one is, I know I've mentioned it about like the synergy and consistency. This is still a lightning card. A lot of our powerful cards that we want to put in these decks, we realize are not lightning or ice, or at least our attacks. And it's like, well, you need a balance between the two. And I think this is one of the stronger cards that you can fuse with, or you can play it, because as a 0 cost go again, it never really is out of place in a hand. You can just throw it down there. So I think it's really strong. Obviously, not blocking is a bit of a downside, but yeah, I think it just meshes with hands really well, and it never feels too out of place. It is actually it is a little bit awkward with Lexi's ability sometimes if you decide to arsenal it in a Death Dealer list, because then you don't really get the go again off of it for your next arrow. In the Voltaire and Shiver lists, you can arsenal it just fine. Throw something into the second arsenal spot with go again, fire it, and then you play the ball lightning, and I think it flows really well. So overall, for an individual use, it might not be crazy, but I think it's just really strong in its versatility, and it just threatens a ton.
Cutting for time here, we're just gonna kind of skim through. So each guy like kind of identified a card, so they're gonna have a little chance, and then we're not gonna have like the full roundtable discussion on these ones. Um, I like Electrify. That was the card that I said, as a lightning card, I really enjoyed. So Electrify for red is a 1 cost. The next time an attack action card hits a hero this turn, it deals 3 damage to them. If Electrify is played from Arsenal, draw a card with Go Again, and it blocks for 2. So, several reasons I love this card. Number one, it replaces itself. As Lexi, you want to be arsenaling cards, especially face down. And there's nothing better than flipping this card face up and then getting to Go Again and then playing this card because you have leftover resources plus you draw a card. And any damage that you deal now, and the next time, it's not the next card, it's the next time. So you're getting Go Again from Voltaire, so you're going to be going wide, and that extra damage is something that your opponent always has to think about. I actually closed out a game last night because I had let off with this card, the red version, so the +3. And my last card in the chain was, I think, coming for 5, and they were only able to block for 4. So that 5 hit, and then the additional 3 hit, and then I think I played Ball Lightning, so there was an additional damage. But anyway, I went from like they took 1 damage, but they had 6 health left. They took 1 damage from that attack, and it ended up closing out the game because of all the additional follow-up damage. So Electrify is just fantastic. I would highly recommend playing it. In Lexi lists, I run 6 of them, but I could see people. I think I actually run 7 of them, but it's very good. And then the last card, Sam, you wanted to talk about Blink. So that is a Lightning Majestic. Give us your thoughts on Blink.
I don't really know if I found a place for it yet. It's just a really interesting card to look at because the only other card that we've really had in the game where it would give us additional action points have been equipment, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, barring the whole go again mechanic. But it just because again, being a brute player, I have to roll a dice if I want to get additional action points. This is just a free card that I can play without any kind of risk. So into Prism, it can be really effective if you're playing Briar, and even I guess if you're playing Lexi, because you can still shoot multiple arrows at that point while killing auras first. So I just think it's a really interesting card. I don't know where it fits yet, but it's just a really cool card in terms of, and I think it's balanced pretty well too, given the fact that it's a blue and it can't defend or anything like that. So.
All right, moving on to ice cards. Sam, don't mute yourself because you're the first one up here. Ice cards. Sam, you want to talk about Channel Lake Frigid. Channel Lake Frigid is a 2-cost blue 3-block. Go again. Cards and activated abilities cost an opposing hero an additional health. That's just generic. This thing stays out there because it is an aura. And then it also has the new keyword of channel. So at the beginning of your end phase, put a flow counter on Channel Lake Frigid and then destroy it unless you put an ice card from your pitch zone on the bottom of your deck. So you have to pitch ice in order to keep this thing afloat. Very hard to do for 2 turns in a row, but it is possible. Sam, why is Lake Frigid insane?
I think it's one of the cool stun cards that's in the game where it doesn't completely make your opponent not be able to play, but it significantly slows them down, and they kind of have to just wait it out. So it's really powerful in a lightning hybrid build with Lexi, where you can get this on the field but still threaten a lot of damage, where they're going to be more inclined to block because they won't really be able to do anything on their turn anyway. Most of the time when I see this card played against me, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm just blocking until they can't pitch for it anymore, and then I'll try to come out after that. So it just kind of really shuts you down. and it can just be a really powerful stun card, especially if it's up for like 2 or 3 turns.
Nice. My ice card that I wanted to talk about was Blizzard. So Blizzard's a 0-cost ice instant. Blue pitch, target attack loses and can't gain go again unless the attacking hero plays 2 or pays 2 cost. So I love running this in Oldham. The reason I wanted to talk about it with Lexi is because I think this kind of fits into the Lightning Press section of crossover cards. I think if there is a crossover card to play in a Lightning variant, I think this might be one of the cards. I think Channel Lake Frigid, you could probably justify 2 crossing over, even though you can't really actually no, because you can't keep it on afloat. Blizzard, I think, is very good on its own without needing additional ice support. And so I think you could sideboard these 3 into a Lightning build even, and have this just in case you're against a hyper aggro go wide potential. You can play this card to disrupt, and it would even be good to flip it over and give them a frostbite. It's not a bad thing. Next card here we have Polar Blast. I believe Levi. I believe you were the one that wanted to talk a little bit about Polar Blast. So Polar Blast says it's a one for 2 block. I'm sorry, it's a 1 cost. It's a red. Target opposing hero may pay 3 resources. If they don't, your next attack this turn gains dominate. It's 3 for the red, 2 for the yellow, 1 for the blue, and then you get dominate regardless. If Polar Blast is played from Arsenal, draw 1 card. Levi, why is this card good?
It's very similar to the Electrify that we were talking about. Is as Lexi, you're going to be fusing, and typically your arrow is going to end off your chain. So you're going to end up arsenaling either your lightning or ice card. And this card is obviously like amazing played out of the arsenal. You get to give them a frostbite, it replaces itself, and then all of a sudden they're in a situation where they don't want to pay the resources. Most of the time they won't, but all of a sudden you'll get into a late game situation where they have to, otherwise they die. And if they do decide to give your next attack dominate, emphasis on attack, it's not just arrow or elemental attack. You can just hit them with like a command and conquer with dominate, and they are gonna have a bad time. So just overall, the fact that you played out Arsenal, it replaces itself, and the dominate's kind of just like icing on the cake.
All right, James, we're gonna end with you here for the Weave Ice. We have a 0-cost 2 block ice card. The next ice or elemental attack action card you play this turn gains +3, and if it's fused, it gains dominate with go again. Why is this thing great?
First thing is while Sam's camera is off, everybody's face is in a different box now because it, for whatever reason, it jumbled the thing up. So Ryan's face is in Levi's box. Levi's face is in Sam's box.
I get to be Sam.
Yeah.
If you've made it this long in the video,
well, I think people enjoy. People like the in-depth. Okay, so Weave Ice is and I also want to add that Levi's card of Polar Blast is my absolute favorite ice card, generic ice card. Anyways, Weave Ice is my number 2 because not only is it a buff 3, buff 2, buff 1 for the respective colors, but that second clause is where I get excited. If it is fused, it gains dominate. So playing a Weave Ice and then making a frostbite. So you flip, make a frostbite, play the Weave Ice, pitch blue, load, shoot Blizzard Bolt, select go again, fuse. You got a 8 attack dominate. If it hits, if it deals damage, make a frostbite, and you're gonna shoot again. So it's gonna deal damage, the first one. And then they gotta go, well, then if I don't block the second one, I'm gonna get another frostbite token, or Chilling Ice Vein Claws is going to happen to me again, or something of the other is going to take place. So I like Weave Ice because of the Dominate clause. So and that's how I close out a game. I'll pitch the blues consistently and save them for endgame, and getting that +1 and then that Dominate, and then annoying them with Polar Blast throughout the game as well, making them pay so I don't get the Dominate. Just is constant pressure and gives the opponent something to worry about constantly, especially because in the ice version of Lexi, we want our arrows to hit, to be disruptive for their next turn. So excellent card. Cannot wait. I would assume, since we got Weave Lightning as the promo card with the Lexi Armory kit, I hope Oldham's kit is Weave Ice. Is it not?
It's Polar Blast.
I'm happy about Polar Blast, but I
Right?
would have been happy about Weave Ice too. But either one, very very cool, and that's all I got to say about that.
Nice. All right. Well, does anybody have any parting thoughts on the character, anything in general, before we wrap this up and give my final thoughts here?
I guess I will. I'll say my final thoughts are from an extensive Ranger player prior to when I met Levi, and now after when I met Levi, and having played Ranger in the past. Sam alluded to earlier, it's almost like they did her wrong, and now they've padded Lexi, they've padded her stats, and they've made her exemplary hero and given her above curve cards and a great weapon. And it feels like like a makeup call in a football game. A referee, oh, I made a bad call, so the next thing I'm going to let slide. It's kind of a nod to Ranger players to say, here, you kind of struggled, but now here's the payoff. And so I've been having a lot of fun. My brain has been twisting and turning of different builds and solving puzzles. Something that I think all heroes in this set have fun with is the dual elements. Nothing stimulates my brain more than different avenues of trying to solve and make my deck stronger and better. And Lexi is everything I like about this game and everything I like about deck building. So if you have not given her a shot, I would recommend it, because you'll find yourself having fun trying to select the multiple avenues of her win conditions. And playing Ranger feels fun. Shooting arrows just feels satisfying. Loading the bow feels satisfying. I know it sounds silly, but it really is fun. And I just think that she's a great hero, and I'm happy that she's a great hero, because it feels like the deserved Ranger appreciation that was needed.
Well said. Well said. All right. Well, yeah, I will, before I wrap it up here, I'll reiterate what he said. I mean, I was not a Ranger player. I was not like Levi. I was not like Jim. I never played Azalea. Literally, I didn't play her one game before this format. Still haven't. But playing Ranger has been really fun. Even without any Ranger experience, I, really would suggest that you try her out, because it is fun to kind of work out the patterns. But on behalf of Levi, Sam, James, and the rest of the roundtable, thank you guys for watching. As usual, please, if you have any questions, comments, if you have any disagreements with anything that Jim said throughout this entire video, like you probably normally do, make sure you express that opinion in the comments section. We love engaging with people. We're excited to get back active. We know we've kind of taken some lulls in between the consistency of our videos. But with this set, the six of us are going to be really, back at it and just creating gameplay videos, first impression videos. We've got Oldham, I think, on deck with the first impression series. We've got deck techs that are going to start coming at you, as well as gameplay. So we know we went away for a little bit. Make sure that you stick around and you follow our stuff. But as usual, comment below. We will love to engage with you guys.
Right before you go, sorry.
Just interrupt me. I was on a roll, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to say this because I know people are going to ask. People constantly on these videos will ask for a deck list, and I'm not going to post deck lists to this video because I'm sure Levi and myself will make a Lexi series and where we'll include deck lists and deck techs. So if you made it this far, I'm not going to have a deck list on here. And look for future videos where we will provide that. But as far as today and for this video, there will not be one.
Yeah, so now my momentum's ruined. But
I had to say it.
Thank you guys for following along this long or waiting this long. If you guys have watched this in one part, then you guys are saints. Congratulations. I appreciate you. But yeah, as usual, thank you for listening. And until next time, Roundtable out.